In the early hours of April 10th, 1940, Captain Bernard Warbuton Lee led his flotilla of destroyers against a German force twice its size at Narvik, in the far north of Norway. Without waiting for reinforcements, the British ships caught their opponents completely unawares, resulting in a furious exchange of torpedoes and gunfire as the German crews scrambled to fight off their attackers and then tried to hunt down the British ships. The German destroyers had arrived at Narvik before dawn on April 9th, under the command of Commodore Friedrich Bonte. The flotilla of 10 destroyers was carrying 3 battalions of the 3rd Mountain Division to their landing points in the Norwegian port as the German invasion of Norway unfolded. Standing in the way of Bonte's ships was only the old coastal defence ships Norge and Eidsvoll, which challenged the German ships and were promptly torpedoed and sunk, with the loss of 343 lives. At this point, the British were lagging badly behind events across Norway. The Kriegsmarine had taken the Royal Navy completely by surprise by launching naval invasions at 5 different ports simultaneously. British ships at sea near Narvik under Vice Admiral William Whitworth had been ordered west the previous day, as the Admiralty had believed that the German fleet was trying to break out into the Atlantic shipping lanes. It took until 7:15 PM on April 8th for Whitworth to be ordered back to his station off Narvik. The British Admiral sent destroyers under Captain Bernard Warbuton Lee ahead of his main force, but when they arrived at the entrance to the Ofotfjord the following day, they were informed by Norwegian lighthouse staff that German ships had long since passed by. Keen to take the initiative and strike a blow against the Germans as quickly as possible, Warbuton Lee decided to launch an attack that night, hoping to catch the Germans by surprise, even if that meant engaging a much larger force of destroyers without any backup. This video is sponsored by War Thunder, the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made. In War Thunder, you can pilot over 2,000 tanks, planes, helicopters and ships, including my personal favourite, the F4 Phantom, in dynamic combined arms PvP battles. Every vehicle available is incredibly detailed and modelled down to their individual components, offering a highly immersive experience. You don't even need any extra hardware to fly the aircraft thanks to the game's intuitive mouse aim mode. Whether you enjoy a fast-paced, action-packed match or a more realistic and tactical experience, War Thunder has the game mode for you. Available to play free now on PC, Xbox and PlayStation. Captain Warbuton Lee took his 5 destroyers into the Ofotfjord at 1:30 AM April 10th. In the lead was his flagship HMS Hardy, then Hunter, Havoc, Hotspur and Hostile. Weather conditions were awful, with blizzards, high winds and very low visibility of just 400 yards. This was a blessing in disguise, as it meant the British ship steamed past 2 separate German U-boats without being spotted or engaged. By 3:40 AM, the British ships were on a parallel course to the German guardship that night, Dieter von Roeder. The German ship was returning to harbour and was scarcely more than a mile north of Hardy, but neither side had any idea the other was there. Commodore Bonte's force of destroyers was not expecting an attack, and the Germans were in the middle of refuelling. It was a task that was progressing slower than hoped, as one of the 2 fuel tankers assigned to Narvik had been sunk on its way north, and the other had a low pumping capacity. In the harbour, Hans Ludemann and Hermann Kühne were in the middle of refuelling, with Anton Schmidt awaiting its turn and Wilhelm Heidkamp having recently finished. Elsewhere, 3 destroyers, Wolfgang Zenker, Erich Kölner and Erich Gieser, were anchored in the Harjangsfjord to the north. Georg Thiele and Bern von Arnim were in Balingen Bay, 8 miles southwest of Narvik. Commodore Bonte was asleep in his cabin, as Dieter von Roeder returned to harbour after its patrol at 4:25 AM. Hans Ludemann was supposed to replace von Roeder as guardship, but was still refuelling, leaving the German flotilla without any eyes outside the harbour. At almost that exact moment, as the snow started to clear and the sky began to lighten with the first signs of dawn, the British ships arrived. Commander Warbuton Lee made his first attack run with 3 ships. The bay ahead was crowded with vessels, more than 20 of them merchant ships trapped there following the German invasion the previous day. Hardy's crew picked out the silhouette of 2 German destroyers at the far end of the bay and fired 3 torpedoes. One of these struck a merchant ship and one the Wilhelm Heidkamp, Bonte's flagship. It struck the destroyer's magazine and there was a huge explosion. 80 German sailors, including Bonte, were killed almost instantly, and Heidkamp was destroyed. Hardy turned hard to port and, spotting Dieter von Roeder to its east, loosed 4 more torpedoes and opened fire with its guns. As Roeder had its stern facing the British, these torpedoes missed, striking a jetty used for loading iron ore on the shoreline. The German ship fired back, joined soon by Hans Ludemann as Hunter and Havoc came in for their own attack runs. Between them they launched 11 more torpedoes into the harbour, striking Anton Schmidt once, as well as a number of merchant ships of mixed nationalities. At 4:50, Hotspur and Hostile began their own attack, having returned from a scouting mission to the north. Hotspur steamed in and fired 4 torpedoes at 5 AM at what turned out to be a collection of merchant ships. Hostile opened up with guns, hitting the Dieter von Roeder, rupturing its fuel tank and causing a fire in a boiler room. By this time, Roeder's captain, Lieutenant Commander Erich Holtorf, had managed to manoeuvre his ship into a firing angle and loosed 8 torpedoes at the British ships crowding in the harbour entrance. They were aimed well, but Holtorf was let down by the torpedoes. 3 of them ran straight underneath British destroyers, but their magnetic detonators did not activate, malfunctioning due to the extreme northern latitude of Narvik, a problem that afflicted German torpedoes throughout the Norway campaign. Over the next hour, Warbuton Lee led his ships in for second and third attack runs, but found diminishing returns as the visibility worsened, with the weather closing in and smoke from burning fuel oil filling the air. Just after 5:50 AM, with his flotilla's torpedoes mostly expended, Warbuton Lee began to withdraw, steaming west at high speed. Just 2 minutes later though, HMS Hardy spotted 3 hostile destroyers emerging from the side fjord to the north. This clutch of vessels, under Lieutenant Commander Eric Bay, had set off 10 minutes before and now closed on the escaping British destroyers. A gun battle between the two sides swiftly began, with the British ships ahead of their opponents and making good progress. But just when Warburton Lee might have thought he was clean away, peering straight ahead were 2 more enemy destroyers. This was Georg Thiele and Bernd von Arnim, which had emerged from the south to find themselves in the perfect firing position onto the British line. They wasted no time. A hail of fire from the 2 ships rained down on Hardy, who could only reply with her forward gun. Warburton Lee turned sharply to port to allow his rear guns to fire, but the weight of German shell was too great. At 5:56 AM, a shell burst directly on Hardy's bridge, killing most of the officers there and mortally wounding the British commander. Hardy's steering gear was wrecked and the destroyer slew towards the shoreline, grounding itself shortly afterwards. With Hardy out of the picture, the German ships switched their fire to Havoc and Hostile. With the range now widening, they did not score any major hits. Georg and Bernd von Arnim now steered round to the west, engaging the British in a renewed gunnery duel. HMS Hunter was soon on fire, while Georg suffered hits to its boiler room and had its forward gun destroyed. Behind them all, HMS Hotspur was lagging behind, suffering steering issues, being harassed by Bay's 3 destroyers, which by this time had turned to the east. Noticing this, HMS Havoc turned back at 6:05 AM, going to Hotspur's aid and firing on Bay's ships from long range. Meanwhile, at the head of the German line, Georg Thiele loosed 3 torpedoes, and this time one of them claimed a hit on Hunter, blowing a massive hole in its side and causing it to slow rapidly to a halt, listing. Behind it, Hostile and Havoc, now steaming west again, were able to avoid Hunter, but Hotspur, still suffering from steering issues, was unable to avoid the sinking Hunter. One British destroyer slammed into the other, sealing Hunter's fate and knocking Hotspur off course. The destroyer was able to recover control of its steering, but was now lagging behind and under fire from multiple German ships. Hotspur managed to put up a spirited resistance though, evading enemy fire and inflicting 7 hits on the Bernd von Arnim at close range, forcing it to disengage. At 6:30 AM, the first Battle of Narvik came to a close, with the remaining British ships withdrawing to the west. Each side had lost 2 destroyers, with 147 British casualties and 176 German. Both commanders had been killed, and both would be decorated by their respective sides. Warbuton Lee's raid had done serious damage to the German force, but it still remained a stubborn obstacle. Determined to clear the way for an Allied landing, the Royal Navy resolved to mount a second attack into the narrow waters of the fjord, but this time with a rather larger calibre of ship, the 32,000-ton battleship HMS Warspite. We'll be covering this second Battle of Narvik in the next episode. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss it. Remember to check out War Thunder, free to play on Xbox, PlayStation and PC. It's the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and you can check it out at the link in the description below. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video.